For years, a specter has haunted the corridors of the internet. You've seen it in the clickbait thumbnails, the exaggerated promises, the garish titles screaming secrets they never truly deliver. You've seen the flashy, often completely ineffective, dark psychology tricks on YouTube, a carnival sideshow of manipulation that promises control but only teaches you how to be a louder clown in a room full of noise. But behind that carnival curtain, in the quiet, soundproofed rooms of boardrooms, negotiation tables, and the most successful social interactions in history, exists a different reality. A reality built not on flash but on function, not on deception but on a deep, almost intimate understanding of the human machine. Now, it's time to move beyond the imitations and step into the operating theater. It's time for the genuine article, the psychological principles backed by decades of rigorous science that actually, consistently, and powerfully deliver results. Let us be unequivocally clear from the outset. The strategies we will dissect today are not parlor tricks. They are the architectural blueprints of influence. They are subtle, potent, and engineered to guide human behavior, often below the level of conscious awareness. They are, by their nature, tools of manipulation. This is not a game. Wield these tools with arrogance, and you will become a poison. You will systematically dismantle relationships, corrode trust into a brittle, fragile thing, and ultimately find yourself isolated in a prison of your own making, surrounded by the ghosts of the connections you exploited. The ethical burden here is immense. Consider this your only warning. The mind is not a fortress to be stormed. It is a complex ecosystem to be understood. You are about to learn its weather patterns, its geography, and its hidden levers. Trick once. The neurological trigger of the name. The scenario is universal, a cacophony of sound, a sea of moving bodies. The instinct is to wave, to shout, to create a larger signal. This is brute force. The master, however, uses a scalpel. A single, precise incision. Hey, Sarah, why does this work with such stunning reliability? The answer lies deep within the temporal lobe of the human brain, in a region known as the superior temporal sulcus. Neurological imaging studies consistently show that hearing one's own name produces a unique and immediate burst of activity in this area. It is a cocktail party effect, personified, the brain's exquisite filter that allows it to tune out irrelevant noise and snap to attention at a stimulus of profound personal significance. Your name is the sound of your own identity. It is the psychological equivalent of a key turning in a lock. But the application goes far deeper than a crowded room. In a one-on-one conversation, using a person's name transforms an abstract dialogue into a personal address. It says, "I see you specifically. This message is for you." It is the difference between a politician giving a speech to a crowd and a confidant sharing a secret with a friend. The former is heard, the latter is received. In email communication, starting with "Hi David," rather than a generic "Hi," immediately personalizes the interaction, increasing open rates and engagement. The name is the simplest, most potent anchor of personal connection we possess. Trick 2D. Reflective listening, the art of the psychological mirror. Most people do not listen to understand, they listen to reply. Their focus is on formulating their own next brilliant point, waiting for the slightest pause to interject. This is the dialogue of the deaf. Reflective listening is the antidote. It is the disciplined practice of stepping outside of your own mind and entering the emotional and intellectual landscape of the other person. The technique is deceptively simple. You reflect the core content and, more importantly, the underlying emotion of what they have said, but you frame it as a question for confirmation. So, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're not just stressed about the deadline, You're anxious that missing it will make the entire team question your capabilities. Is that right? This single act performs 3 simultaneous functions, each powerful on its own. First, it acts as a reality check, ensuring you have accurately decoded their message, preventing catastrophic misunderstandings. Second, and most crucially, it provides emotional validation. By naming their feeling, anxious, frustrated, excited, you are giving their internal state an external label. You are making the invisible visible. This is profoundly soothing to the human psyche. It makes a person feel profoundly seen and understood, instantly lowering defensive barriers and flooding the interaction with a sense of psychological safety. Third, it builds a bridge of immense trust. You are demonstrating, through action, that your primary goal is comprehension, not conquest. You are building the interaction on a foundation of empathy. In negotiations, this can reveal underlying interests. In conflicts, it can de-escalate tension faster than any logical argument. In leadership, it fosters a loyalty that commands cannot buy. Trick 30. Positive reinforcement. Operant conditioning. In the wild B.F. Skinner's principles of operant conditioning are often relegated to textbooks and animal training, but they govern a vast portion of human behavior. The rule is simple: behavior that is rewarded is behavior that is repeated. Positive reinforcement is the strategic application of this law. The key lies in the formula: the reinforcement must be immediate, specific, and sincere. The generic, "good job," is weak currency. It is noise. Contrast it with this: Sarah, the way you structured the data on slides 4 and 5 was exceptional. It made the value proposition immediately clear to the client, and it directly contributed to us winning that account. See the difference. You have not just given praise, you have created a cause and effect narrative. You have explicitly connected a specific action, structuring data, to a positive outcome, winning the account. You have answered the unspoken question: why does this matter? This does not just make Sarah feel good, it literally rewires her understanding of what good work looks like in this context. It tells her precisely which neurons to fire again. In teams, this creates a culture where excellence is recognized and therefore replicated. In personal relationships, it gently guides your partner toward the behaviors that foster harmony and connection. You are, quite literally, shaping your environment through strategic appreciation. Trick 40. Mirroring. The unconscious dance of rapport. Before language, there was the body, and our primal brains are still hardwired to read it. Mirroring is the non-verbal equivalent of reflective listening. It is the subtle, almost imperceptible mimicking of another person's posture, gestures, tone of voice, and even breathing rate. The mechanism is tied to the mirror neuron system in the brain, a network of cells that fire both when we perform an action and when we observe someone else performing that same action. This system is the biological bedrock of empathy. When you mirror someone, you are sending a continuous, unconscious stream of data to their mirror neurons, signaling sameness. You are, on a primal level, saying, "I am like you. We are part of the same tribe. You are safe with me." The application must be subtle to be effective. A direct copy is perceived as mockery. It is an art of slight echoes. If they lean back and cross their legs, you might shift your own posture into a more relaxed state a moment later. If they speak with their hands, you might incorporate slightly more gesture into your own speech. In high-stakes meetings or sales pitches, skilled practitioners use mirroring to build an almost instantaneous sense of rapport, making the other party more receptive to their ideas without understanding why. It is the silent music to which trust dances. Trick 5e. The strategic pause. The power of the void. In a world saturated with noise, silence is the most disruptive force of all. We are socially conditioned to fill silence, to see it as an awkward void that must be occupied. The master reverses this conditioning and wields silence as a tool. The strategic pause involves, after making a critical point or a significant offer, deliberately stopping talking and holding the silence for 3, 4, 5 seconds. This does several things. First, it gives weight to what you just said. It signals this point is important. Digest it. Second, it creates immense psychological pressure on the other person. The social discomfort of the silence triggers an almost compulsive need in them to break it. And since you were the last to speak, the easiest way for them to break it is to respond to what you said. In negotiations, this is where concessions are born. The other party, swimming in the silence, will often start talking to fill the space, frequently clarifying their position, offering new information, or modifying their offer to elicit a response from you. The pause is a vacuum that pulls truth and compromise into the open. In conversation, it shows thoughtfulness and confidence. You are not rushing, you are considering. You are comfortable in the quiet. This projects a powerful, unshakable calm that others instinctively gravitate toward and defer to. Trick 6C. Anchoring. The first number's tyranny. Human judgment is not absolute, it is relative. We are terrible at assessing intrinsic value, but we are brilliant at comparing things. The anchoring effect, a cognitive bias first rigorously demonstrated by Tversky and Kahneman, exploits this perfectly. The first piece of information offered, the anchor, sets the reference point for all subsequent judgments. In a salary negotiation, the first number mentioned, whether by you or the employer, drags the entire discussion into its gravitational pull. If you ask for 120,000 and the employer was thinking the 90,000, you have instantly redefined the bargaining range. The negotiation is no longer about whether you get 90,000 or 100,000, and it's about whether you settle for 105,000 or 110,000. Your high anchor has made 100,000 seem like a compromise. This principle extends far beyond money. In presenting options, if you show a client a premium package first, the standard package that follows seems more reasonable. In a dispute, the first accusation or demand sets the emotional and tactical tone for the entire conflict. The one who sets the anchor controls the landscape of the debate. The key is to be bold but justifiable. An outlandish anchor loses all power, but a strategically high one gives you immense leverage. Trick 7A, the duality of request. Door in the face versus foot in the door. These two techniques are two sides of the same coin, both leveraging the principle of commitment and consistency, a core tenet of influence identified by Robert Cialdini. People have a deep-seated desire to be consistent with their past actions and commitments. The door in the face DITFF technique involves making a large, likely to be rejected request first. After the refusal, you retreat to your smaller actual request. The psychological mechanism is powerful. The other person has just refused you, creating a slight sense of social debt or guilt. When you then make a more reasonable request, they feel a pressure to agree to restore psychological equilibrium. They see themselves as having driven a hard bargain. I got them down from 100 to 110, when in fact you have guided them to your target all along. This is the fundraiser's classic tool. The foot in the door's FITD technique works in the opposite direction. You start with a small, trivial request that is almost impossible to refuse. Can you sign this petition? Once they agree, they have taken a small action, they have made a small commitment. Their self-perception shifts slightly to, I am the kind of person who helps this cause, supports this person. Later, when you make the larger, real request, Could you make a donation? They are far more likely to comply to remain consistent with this new self-image. The small yes paves the way for the big yes. A trick 90 social proof. The safety of the herd in situations of uncertainty. When we don't know how to behave, we look to others to guide us. This is social proof. It is the reason laugh tracks exist on television shows and why bars put a few bills in the tip jar at the start of the night. It is the psychological principle that underlies fads, trends, and mobs. To harness social proof, you must make the herd visible. This is our best-selling model. 9 out of 10 departments have already adopted this. Industry leaders are all moving in this direction. You are not just presenting your idea, you are presenting it on a conveyor belt of social validation. You are answering the unspoken question, is this safe? Is this what people like me are doing? In the age of the internet, social proof is currency. Testimonials, reviews, follow accounts, and most popular banners are all applications of this powerful bias. It reassures the anxious mind that the path has been tread before, that the choice is a safe one. It is the antidote to the fear of standing out. Trick A, the Benjamin Franklin effect. The favor that binds the Benjamin Franklin effect is a counterintuitive masterpiece. The premise is simple: we grow to like people for whom we do favors. Yes, you read that correctly. It is not the recipient of the favor who becomes more endeared, but the giver. Franklin famously disarmed a political rival by writing him a letter politely asking to borrow a rare book from his library. The rival, flattered, sent it. Franklin returned it with a gracious thank you note. Thereafter, the rival, who had previously been cold, became warm and helpful. Why? Cognitive dissonance. The rival's brain had to reconcile two conflicting ideas. I don't like this man, and I did a favor for this man. Since the action, doing the favor, was undeniable, the attitude had to shift. I must like him after all. Why else would I have helped him? Asking for a small, manageable favor, advice, a minor resource, a moment of their time, is not a sign of weakness. It is an invitation for the other person to invest in you. That small investment creates a bond. It makes them see you in a more positive light because their own actions have committed them to doing so. It is a profoundly elegant way to turn an adversary into an ally. Trick 11. The scarcity principle. The psychology of urgency. The scarcity principle operates on a fundamental law of human desire that which is rare is inherently more valuable. This isn't just an economic principle, it's a deep-seated cognitive bias rooted in our evolutionary past. Resources that were limited, food, shelter, mates, required urgent action. Those who hesitated did not survive. This instinct is now hardwired into our modern brains, activated by phrases like limited edition, last chance, or selling out fast. The neurological mechanism involves the amygdala, the brain's alarm system. When we perceive potential loss, the amygdala triggers a mild stress response, shifting our brain from a calm, deliberative state to a more reactive, action-oriented one. This is the feeling of FOMO, fear of missing out, a genuine anxiety that compels us to act to avoid a negative outcome. The masterful application of scarcity goes beyond simply stating limited quantity. It involves crafting a narrative of exclusivity and opportunity. This offer is exclusively for our founding members, or the early access list closes at midnight, creates a double layer of scarcity, both of the product and of the opportunity to acquire it. In negotiation, revealing, I have another candidate interviewing this afternoon, introduces scarcity of your own time and attention, increasing your perceived value. The key is authenticity. Manufactured scarcity that is exposed destroys trust irrevocably. But genuine limitation, properly framed, is one of the most powerful drivers of human decision-making. Trick 12 I emotional labeling, disarming the amygdala hijack. When emotions run high, logic shuts down. This is known as an amygdala hijack, where the brain's emotional center overrides the prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational thought. Emotional labeling is the verbal judo designed to prevent this hijacking. The technique involves acting as a mirror for the other person's emotional state, but without judgment or agreement. You are not saying, "You are right to be angry." You are simply observing, "You seem angry about this," or "It sounds like you're feeling betrayed." This act of naming the emotion does two critical things. First, it validates the person's internal experience, making them feel heard and understood, which itself has a calming effect. Second, and more scientifically, the act of assigning a word to an emotion, a process called affect labeling, has been shown in fMRI studies to diminish the response of the amygdala and increase activity in the prefrontal cortex. In essence, you are helping their brain transition from an emotional reaction back to a rational conversation. In crisis negotiations, hostage situations, and even heated marital arguments, this technique is foundational. It doesn't mean you concede, it means you create the psychological safety necessary for a dialogue to exist. By verbally acknowledging the storm of emotion, you begin to calm it. Trick 70. The reciprocity norm. The unseen debt. Professor Robert Cialdini elevated the reciprocity norm to one of his 6 core principles of persuasion, and for good reason. It is a social rule so powerful it transcends cultures. We are hardwired to feel obligated to return a favor, gift, or concession. This debt feeling is psychologically uncomfortable, and we seek to eliminate it by balancing the scales. The genius of this principle lies in its strategic initiation. The initial gift or concession must be perceived as voluntary and personal. A generic corporate swag bag has little effect. A personalized note with a relevant article attached to it, however, carries significant weight. The gift can also be non-material, a meaningful concession in a negotiation, an unexpected piece of valuable information, or a sincere and specific compliment. This creates a powerful, often unspoken sense of indebtedness. The other party now feels a pull to reciprocate. In business, this might mean they are more likely to grant you a meeting, give you a better price, or advocate for you internally. The key is to give first, and to give in a way that feels genuine. The moment it feels like a transactional bait, the spell is broken. Trick 14. The Zeigarnik effect. The power of the unfinished. Russian psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik discovered that people have a significantly better memory for tasks that are interrupted or uncompleted than for tasks they have finished. Our brains dislike open loops. They create a state of psychological tension that our cognitive machinery is driven to resolve. This is the cliffhanger effect that keeps us binge-watching television series. The strategic application involves deliberately creating open loops to maintain engagement and occupy mental real estate. You can use this in presentations. We'll come back to the 3 critical risks in a moment, but first, you can use it in project management. The next phase is intriguing because it tackles a problem we haven't seen before. You can even use it in social settings. I have a hilarious story about that, but I have to tell you later. This leaves your audience, your team, or your date in a state of anticipation. Your topic, your project, or your conversation stays active in their mind, their brain unconsciously working to close the loop. It is a way of ensuring you are not easily forgotten. Trick 15C. Pacing and leading. The hypnotic rhythm of trust, derived from the world of hypnotherapy. Pacing and leading is a conversational pattern that builds agreement step by step, making a larger conclusion feel inevitable. You start by pacing, stating a series of undeniable, objective truths that the other person must agree with. These are statements about the weather, the current situation, or their own verifiable feelings. You've been working on this project for 6 months. The pace, fact. You've invested countless weekends. The pace, fact. You feel a deep sense of ownership over it. The pace, likely true and validating, and that's exactly why taking this next bold step is the natural progression. So lead by first establishing a pattern of yes. Of agreement, you lower critical resistance. The brain gets into a rhythm of compliance. When you then deliver the lead, your suggestion or directive, it is met with less scrutiny because it is presented as a logical extension of the established truths. It feels like the next step in a sequence they have already agreed to. Salespeople use this to guide clients, leaders use it to build consensus, and anyone can use it to make a suggestion feel less like a command and more like a shared discovery. Trick 16C. The power of because. The justification instinct, the work of psychologist Ellen Langer, demonstrated the astonishing power of the word because. In a famous study, a researcher asked to cut in line at a photocopier. The request, "Excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the Xerox machine?" yielded a 60% compliance rate. However, simply adding a reason, "Because I'm in a rush," skyrocketed compliance to 94%. The most fascinating finding was that even a meaningless reason, "Because I have to make copies," achieved a 93% success rate. The word because triggers a heuristic in our brain. We assume that a reason will follow, and we often accept the request without deeply processing the validity of the reason itself. It satisfies our need for the world to be orderly and justifiable. We are not just agreeing to an action, we are agreeing to a logical structure. In practice, this means you should never make a naked request. Always frame it with a because, even if the reason seems self-evident. We need to finalize the budget by Friday because it will give accounting a full week to process it. This transforms a demand into a reasoned proposition, making it palatable and vastly increasing the likelihood of acquiescence. Trick 17C. The Pygmalion effect, the self-fulfilling prophecy of belief. The Pygmalion effect, named for the Greek myth, is the phenomenon whereby higher expectations lead to an increase in performance. In a landmark study, teachers were told that certain randomly selected students were academic bloomers, destined to spurt ahead. By the end of the year, those very students showed significantly greater IQ gains, simply because their teachers expected it of them. The mechanism works through a cascade of subtle behaviors. When you believe in someone's potential, you unconsciously create a warmer, emotional climate, give them more challenging material, offer more specific feedback, and provide more opportunities for them to respond. This boosted confidence and enhanced environment then enables them to perform at a higher level. As an influencer, you can harness this by consciously setting and communicating high expectations. Telling a team member, "I'm giving you this lead role because I've seen how you thrive under pressure, and I know you can pull this team together," isn't just flattery. It is a powerful psychological intervention that can elevate their self-concept and drive them to meet the standard you have set for them. You become an architect of their potential. Trick 18. In reframing failure, the alchemy of perspective. Human brains are naturally loss-averse and threat-sensitive. A setback or failure is initially processed as a threat, activating stress responses and shutting down creativity. Reframing is the cognitive technique of consciously changing the mental representation or frame through which a situation is viewed. Instead of a failure, it becomes a learning experiment. Instead of a cost, it becomes an investment in R&D. Instead of "or got rejected," it's "we gathered critical market feedback." This isn't positive thinking. It's strategic thinking. You are shifting the context from a static, negative judgment, "this is bad," to a dynamic, forward-looking process, "this is data for improvement." This reframing has a profound impact on motivation and resilience. A team that views failures as learning opportunities is a team that is unafraid to innovate. A person who sees a career setback as a redirection is a person who remains agile and optimistic. By controlling the frame, you control the emotional and behavioral response to adversity. You turn stumbling blocks into stepping stones simply by changing the story you tell about them. Trick 19Z. The halo effect. The glow of the first impression. The halo effect is a cognitive bias where our overall impression of a person is friendly, influences our evaluations of their specific traits. He must also be intelligent and competent. It's a mental shortcut that causes one trait to spill over and illuminate others. The strategic application is to meticulously manage the first trait you reveal. In a meeting, if the first thing you do is provide a sharp, incisive, and valuable insight establishing competence, that halo of competence will make people more likely to see your subsequent ideas as creative and your demeanor as confident. Conversely, if you are late to the first meeting, so establishing unreliability, that horn effect may cast a shadow over your actual work. This is why introductions are critical. Being introduced by a respected figure lends you their halo. Starting a presentation with your most impressive data point sets a high-value frame for everything that follows. You are strategically planting a seed that grows to color the entire forest of people's perception of you. Trick 2. Time constraints. Manufacturing urgency similar to scarcity. But applied to the dimension of time, this principle leverages our innate tendency to procrastinate when given unlimited runway. A deadline, real or implied, forces a decision off the back burner and onto the front. The phrase, "I need your decision by the end of the day," does several things. It implies that your time is valuable and limited scarcity of your attention. It cuts short the endless cycle of deliberation and comparison. It forces the cognitive closure that the Zeigarnik effect shows we crave. In sales, this price is locked in until Friday, prevents the prospect from endlessly shopping around. In management, "I need the preliminary report on my desk by 10 a.m. tomorrow," ensures action is taken. The key is that the constraint must be credible. Too many false deadlines and the tactic loses all power. But a well-placed, authentic time constraint is one of the most effective tools for cutting through inertia and driving action. Trick 21. In perspective, taking the empathic lever. Asking someone to step into another's shoes is not just a moral exercise, it is a powerful cognitive intervention. The phrase, "Imagine you are the customer receiving this product for the first time," forces a mental shift from an internal, self-focused perspective to an external, other-focused one. This shift activates different neural networks, primarily the temporoparietal junction and the medial prefrontal cortex, which are associated with empathy and theory of mind as understanding others' mental states. This activation can bypass personal biases and defensive reasoning. A developer arguing for a complex feature might reconsider when forced to view it from the perspective of a confused elderly user. A stubborn negotiator might soften when asked to consider the pressures facing their counterpart. This technique doesn't attack a person's position, it simply asks them to view the board from a different angle. Often, that new vantage point is all that is needed for them to move their own pieces. Trick 2. The contrast principle, the art of juxtaposition. Our perception is altered by what we compare something to. Place your hand in cold water, then move it to lukewarm water, and it feels hot. The contrast principle exploits this relative nature of judgment. The classic example is the real estate agent showing a rundown, overpriced property first. The second, merely average property, then seems far more attractive and reasonably priced by comparison. In a menu, the expensive steak next to the very expensive turf makes the steak seem like a sensible choice. In a presentation, showing a terrible, inefficient process first makes your new, slightly better, but still flawed solution appear revolutionary. You are not changing the intrinsic value of your offer. You are changing the context in which it is judged. By strategically controlling the comparison point, you can make the same object appear more or less desirable. It is a perceptual magic trick grounded in the immutable laws of sensory contrast. Trick 2T3, the IKEA effect, the value of labor, named for the iconic furniture retailer. The IKEA effect is the cognitive bias that causes people to place a disproportionately high value on products they partially created or assembled. The labor they invest, the sweat equity, becomes part of the product's value in their mind. This is more than just pride. It's a phenomenon of self-aggrandizement and effort justification. We convince ourselves that the thing we worked on is better precisely because we worked on it to justify the effort we expended. The application is profound. Instead of presenting a finished plan, present a skeleton and ask for a team's input in fleshing it out. The final plan becomes their plan, and they will fight for it with a passion they would never muster for a plan handed down from on high. In marketing, allowing even trivial customization, choosing a color, adding a monogram, dramatically increases the customer's attachment to the product. You are not just selling an item, you are selling them a piece of their own identity and effort. Trick 2.4. The decoy effect, asymmetrical dominance, engineering choice. The decoy effect is a masterclass in choice architecture. When presented with two options, introducing a third, asymmetrically dominated option can push people toward a specific choice. The classic example is subscription models online only, then 59 print only, though 125 print full online. The 125, the print only option, is the decoy. It makes no rational sense. Why would you pay the same for less? But its existence makes the print less online option appear overwhelmingly superior. It reframes the decision from, as online access worth 59, to, why would anyone be stupid enough to choose print only when they can get both for the same price? The decoy is not meant to be chosen. It is meant to make one of the original options look like the only sane choice. This is used in everything from wine lists to software pricing. By understanding the relationships between options, you can gently guide people toward the outcome you prefer, all while giving them the illusion of complete freedom of choice. Trick 2.5 is the placebo effect, the power of belief. While most associated with medicine, the placebo effect is a testament to the power of expectation and belief in any domain. If someone believes a process will work, their belief alone can contribute to its success. Telling a team, we're implementing a new project management system that has boosted productivity by 30% at other companies, sets a powerful positive expectation. This belief can increase buy-in, effort, and attention to detail, which in turn can actually create the promised productivity boost. The story becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is not about lying. It is about confidently framing a method or tool with the positive outcomes it is designed to achieve. Your belief in the process is contagious, and that collective belief becomes an active ingredient in the recipe for success. The mind is not a passive observer, it is a participant that can, through sheer expectation, alter the outcome of reality. Trick 26E Loss Aversion, the pain of losing prospect theory, developed by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, reveals a fundamental asymmetry in human decision, making the pain of losing is psychologically about twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining. We are not rational actors seeking maximum benefit. We are fearful actors seeking to minimize potential losses. This principle transforms persuasion. Instead of framing your proposal around what someone will gain, frame it around what they will avoid losing. A financial advisor doesn't say, "This investment could make you money." They say, "This strategy will help protect your retirement savings from market volatility." A manager doesn't say, "This new software will increase efficiency." They say, "If we don't adopt this, we risk falling behind our competitors and losing market share." The language shifts from opportunity to insurance. You are tapping into a deeper, more primal motivation. The brain's amygdala and insula, regions associated with fear and disgust, activate more strongly in response to potential losses than to equivalent gains. By speaking the language of loss prevention, you are speaking directly to the most vigilant parts of the human psyche, making your argument far more compelling and urgent. Trick 27A. The power of touch. The haptic connection alight. Appropriate touch on the arm or shoulder, lasting less than a second, can be one of the most powerful, yet most dangerous, tools in the arsenal. This is the realm of haptic communication. Studies such as the library touch experiment found that patrons who were briefly touched by the librarian when checking out books rated that librarian and the library more favorably, often without any conscious memory of being touched. The mechanism is neurochemical. Appropriate, consensual touch can trigger the release of oxytocin, the bonding hormone, which fosters feelings of trust, connection, and generosity. It is a non-verbal signal that bypasses cognitive guards and speaks directly to the social brain. The application requires extreme situational and cultural awareness. In a celebratory moment, a brief touch on the shoulder can solidify a bond. In a moment of consolation, it can communicate empathy more deeply than words. In a negotiation, it can subtly tip the scales toward cooperation. However, the line between connection and violation is razor thin. Misjudging the context, the relationship, or the person's boundaries can instantly destroy all credibility and trust. It is a precision instrument, not a blunt tool. Trick 2080. The foot in, the mouth effect. The vulnerability play admitting a small, harmless fault or mistake is a counterintuitive power move. Before making a request, you might say, "I have to admit I was a bit confused by the initial brief myself," or "I completely missed that detail on my first pass." This act of minor self-deprecation makes you appear more human, relatable, and, paradoxically, more trustworthy. This works by disarming suspicion. A person who presents as perfect seems polished but distant, and their motives may be questioned. A person who admits a minor flaw is seen as more authentic and transparent. This perceived honesty creates a halo effect of its own, making everything else you say seem more credible. It's a small price in perceived infallibility for a large gain in perceived authenticity. In leadership, this is crucial for psychological safety. A leader who can admit mistakes creates a culture where others feel safe to do the same, fostering innovation and rapid learning from failure. Trick 2T90, the endowment effect, the magic of ownership. We value things more highly simply because we own them. This is the endowment effect. In one classic experiment, participants given a mug were unwilling to sell it for less than twice the price that participants without a mug were willing to pay to acquire one. Ownership itself imbues an object with extra, almost magical value. The strategic application is to confer a sense of ownership before the transaction is even complete. A real estate agent might say to a potential buyer, "Can you imagine your furniture in this living room?" A manager might say to an employee, "As you take ownership of this project, what are your first thoughts?" In marketing, free trials and test drives work on this principle. Once the customer has owned the experience, even temporarily, its perceived value increases, and the pain of losing it, loss aversion, makes the purchase more likely. You are not just selling a product or an idea. You are selling a future version of the self that already possesses it. You are inviting the person to mentally move in, and once they have, asking them to leave feels like a loss. Trick 3 strategic self-deprecation, the ultimate confidence play. This is the advanced, strategic version of the foot in the mouth effect. It is the calculated revelation of a weakness that is either irrelevant to your core argument or, more powerfully, actually serves to highlight a greater strength. A brilliant trial lawyer might begin, "My opponent is a silver-tongued orator, and I'm just a simple man who believes in the facts." This disarms the jury, lowers expectations, and then allows his subsequent competence to shine even brighter. A CEO might say, "I'm not the best with spreadsheets, which is exactly why I hired the most brilliant CFO in the industry." The admitted weakness, lack of spreadsheet skill, serves as proof of a greater strength, strategic hiring and self-awareness. This tactic projects immense confidence. Only someone truly secure in their position can afford to highlight a flaw. It makes you invulnerable to attack, as you have already conceded the minor ground. It humanizes you, builds immense trust, and makes your core competencies appear even more formidable by contrast. You are not hiding your shadow, you are using it to make the light seem brighter. The final synthesis, the ethical architect of influence, you now hold 30 blueprints to the human mind. You understand the levers of attention, the triggers of trust, the engines of persuasion, and the subtle frameworks of perception. This knowledge is a form of power, and as the old adage goes, with great power comes great responsibility. The line between a master and a monster is drawn entirely by intent and ethics. The monster uses these tools for unilateral gain. They see people as objects to be manipulated, hurdles to be cleared. They create dependency, exploit weaknesses, and leave a trail of broken trust. Their victories are Pyrrhic, their relationships transactional, and their world becomes a cold, lonely place. They are the embodiment of the dark psychology, caricature. The master uses these tools as an architect of better outcomes. They see people as partners in a shared reality. They use these principles to build bridges, using mirroring and reflective listening to foster deep understanding and resolve conflicts. Empower others, using the Pygmalion effect and positive reinforcement to help people unlock their own potential. Drive positive change, using social proof and scarcity to rally people toward a worthy cause or an important innovation. Create win-win outcomes, using anchoring and the contrast principle in negotiations to find solutions that leave all parties feeling valued and satisfied. Foster authentic connection, using strategic self-disclosure and the Benjamin Franklin effect to build genuine, resilient relationships. The tools themselves are neutral. A hammer can build a hospital or break a skull. The morality lies in the hand that wields it and the intention behind the swing. Your journey into the architecture of influence does not end here. It begins. The true mastery lies not in memorizing these principles, but in integrating them into your character until they become an effortless expression of how you interact with the world. Use them to create, to build, to inspire, and to understand. The greatest influence you will ever wield is the power to create an environment where everyone feels heard, valued, and capable of achieving more than they thought possible.